Hello, hello, and welcome once again to the David Messiah YouTube channel. My name is Sidney Thomas. I'm the creator and moderator of this channel, where our watchwords are to teach and to build back up the kingdom of Zion. The title of the video presentation today is The King of the South is Russia. The King of the South is Russia. And I return on this occasion to the usual practice of having only a sort of a transmittal video, wherein the link is given to the audio lecture, which is what contains the meat of what is being provided. And the audio lecture in this case is an hour and a half long or so, and it appears to be timely, and in any case I must go and do as I am guided, and he wanted me to put forward this particular piece of news because it is a piece of news. I don't think I've seen anywhere by any of the commentators, whether Christian, whether Hebrew Israelite, whether Jewish, whatever persuasion whatsoever, I don't think I've seen anyone suggest that the king of the south of prophecy is Russia. But that indeed is what I'm being guided, and it is timely because Russia is at war, as everyone knows, against its sort of brother country, Ukraine, and the NATO, which, by the way, I think most would agree. I'm not sure about that, but I suspect most would agree that the king of the north, in contradistinction to the king of the south, is the U.S. NATO formation. And I'm able in this lecture, and also it's there in the book, The Coming of David Messiah, specifically chapter 7, but also a little bit in chapter 2, in terms of the linguistic underpinnings going back to the Paleo-Hebrew, to make that link of the king of the north with so-called Gog and Magog. And Gog and Magog turns out exactly to be those who are now running that U.S. NATO force projection grouping that is very much against Russia, have been encircling Russia, have pushed against Russia, provoked Russia, and now it appears to be the case exactly in accordance with prophecy that the king of the south has in a sense now pushed back. And that, if you read the book of Daniel, chapter 11, around verses 40 to 45, and then go to the book of Ezekiel, chapter 39, what's described there is what most people refer to in prophecy as World War III. So with that pushing back of the king of the south starts off a series of events which leads to that World War III, in the course of which 1/6 only would remain of that U.S. NATO, in any case, King of the North force projection. So it seems as though it is very timely from that angle. And when you go to the book of Ezekiel, chapter 39 again, verse 17, you see where the same figure that is used in the book of Revelation, chapter 19, verse 18, of that of calling the fowls of the air to a great big feast. The level of death and destruction would be so great, of kings and chiefs and captains and etc. That figure is also there in Ezekiel chapter 39, in particular around verse 17. So it seems to be timely from that angle, because those who have been following the channel will well remember the demand letter that I was guided to make upon the Church of the Roman Catholic Church and the State of Israel, in the course of which I was led to Revelation chapter 19, verse 18, and that particular prophetic unfolding, which was tied to Passover this year, which is tomorrow, April 5th. So it seems as though things are unfolding at perhaps a more rapid pace than the news would suggest they are unfolding. And I'm not surprised at that because, things happen first in the spiritual. After they have happened in the spiritual, then the physical sort of catches up eventually. And so even though Revelation 19:18 and therefore also Ezekiel 39 verse 17 are set to be fulfilled as early as tomorrow, and I see no likelihood of that happening already tomorrow in the physical. But in the spiritual, I think that's exactly what indeed will have taken place. The die would have been cast, so to say, and the rest would just be the unfolding in the physical of that which is already written, that which is already prophesied. And we have some time because, in a sense, we have up until the Pentecost feast before, all of this should have been unfolded in the physical. So it's sort of timely from that angle. And again, I must simply do as I'm guided in any case, whether I see it happening or I don't see it happening. But it tells me to put it out there, and so I'm putting it out there. But I wanted just to make a sort of a comment on what is transpiring in the physical in terms of that tussle, that struggle between Russia and NATO, who of course have put huge economic sanctions upon Russia. And in response to that, Russia has taken some very interesting steps in terms of demanding payment for its gas in rubles. And that in itself really means nothing because the question is at what price the rubles, and the question is with what specific sort of commercial arrangements the rubles would be the currency used for Russian gas sales to Europe. Because obviously you could take euros and in effect pay in any case in euros simply by buying the rubles that's required. So it's a question of at what price. But what is significant is that President Putin of Russia seems to have linked the value of the ruble to the value of gold. So that the ruble he has made it into a gold-backed currency, which is what the dollar was up until I think 73 when then President Nixon basically de-linked the dollar altogether from gold. And so the dollar is now a fiat currency. Okay, it is not backed by anything physical. It's just bits and pieces of paper, very nicely printed and colored and so forth, but not backed by anything except the faith and credit, so to say, of those who issue that currency. Well, that bestows upon the United States a huge sort of a benefit. I think in technical terms, it's the benefit of seigniorage, the benefit of those who issue the currency. In effect, get the windfall, a sort of a windfall subsidy from so doing, because the United States dollar is a world reserve currency. But what is now destabilizing of that order of that system is a gold-backed Russian ruble. Now, this is huge news. Now, I haven't seen it discussed to any great degree, but this was the reason why the United States went and basically murdered Gaddafi. Because Gaddafi was suggesting that he would introduce a gold dinar for trade within the African Union, taking away that same sort of reserve rights, so to say, enjoyed by the US dollar. And the Americans were simply not having it. So they were prepared to defend that dollar and kill, assassinate, as they did Gaddafi, in order to do so. Now, when Biden said that he, referring to Putin, um, should not be allowed to remain in power, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, I think that should be taken as a very, very serious threat. I think they would be quite prepared, and nowadays it's entirely within the realm of possibility. All they have to do is send in a drone of sufficient sort of sophistication, and they can almost um, do a pinpoint assassination of Putin, should they so desire. I mean, I don't know the technical sort of parameters of any kind of any such attempt, but I think it's well within the realm of possibility. And if they have the idea that simply by taking out Putin, that threat of a gold-backed Russian ruble would be made to disappear, if they think that that's the case, they might just well do that. Because the sort of underlying a program that's been at work in terms of NATO aggression upon Russia, going back since the fall of the Warsaw Pact and the fall of the Soviet Empire, they have tried and succeeded for a while to bring Russia to its knees. And they succeeded during the time of Boris Yeltsin because the sort of, project for a new American century, so-called neocons of the United States, they were the ones who were like the carpetbaggers that went down into the South after the U.S. Civil War to basically, mop things up financially and economically, get all the bargains that they could, and with a sort of a destroyed South ripe for the pickings. Well, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia was ripe for the pickings, and that's what the oligarchs did. Snapped up the wealth of Russia for a song, basically. And they all tended to be of the same ethnic, religious persuasion, as are all those who are the so-called neocons, those who have been promoting this project for a new American century going back quite some time now. And it does seem as though this is the unfinished program that Putin, rather abruptly brought to a halt when he put an end to those oligarchs. So people like Victoria Nuland and etc. seem to want and have never given up on that program of basically bringing Russia back upon its knees and taking unto themselves the wealth of that country. And it goes back even further to the House of Rothschild, as they had made a blood oath several generations actually before the Bolshevik Revolution, in which they had sworn that they would kill the Tsar, and they did. They financed that Bolshevik Bolshevik Revolution, and as part of it, they killed the Tsar. So it's a very complicated sort of scenario and picture, and it makes the point, which I better do make in this little transmittal video, that the Soviet Empire was quite distinct from what remains of it now in terms of the Russian Federation, because the Russian Federation goes back to its Orthodox roots. Not only that, we see the origins of that Russia as being Negro, as are all the Western and Northwestern European nations. All of the so-called European nobility are Negro, but they have mixed with the people, and so they are like what Scripture calls, in referring to Ephraim, the northern tribes, they are a cake not turned. So they're Negro on the bottom, but many of them now would, of course, look white on top. All of them. So if either, when you look at the crest, the family crest of the ancient sort of European nobility, they all are depicting Negro people. I do not say black, I do not say African, because they were there first. They are the indigenous people of that land when they scattered into lands where mankind never before dwelt. The northern tribe, that's recounted in the book of Second Esdras, chapter 13, I believe, around verse 41. Um, so they went not only to far northwestern Europe, but also to the Americas, also to the far South Pacific, and etc. So it is not by accident that northern and western Europe, in their beginnings, in their origins, are Negro people, and so is Russia, and so is the Orthodox Church. And we see that in all the icons of the Orthodox Church, which depict unashamedly and unabashedly all the biblical characters are represented as they were and as they are as Negro. And they didn't engage in the same sort of whitewashing, at least not to the same degree, as has been the case now in northwestern Europe. So Russia is a very special place in that regard, although quite distinct from that which was the Soviet Empire, of which Russia was the principal part. Anyway, the lecture goes into these matters and many others as well, which are bearing on what is unfolding in the world today. And I do commend that lecture to you. The link to it will be available on Google Drive, and you can download that audio lecture and listen to it at your convenience. And I do hope that you enjoy listening to that lecture as much as I enjoyed making it. Okay, so with that, I say shalom.